That turns it on.
Okay.
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 Turns green. 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 That turns it on.
Okay.
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 Statute on. Statute on. Statute on. Statute on. Statute on.
Welcome to tonight's Candidates Night. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here. I'm Wendy DeWitt. I'm your moderator for this evening. And on behalf, welcome to tonight's Candidates Night. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here. I think we need to turn off our speaker. I'm Wendy DeWitt. I'm your moderator for this evening. And on behalf, welcome to tonight's Candidates Night. Thank you so much. Christina, can we move? Appreciate you being here. I think we need to turn off our speaker. I'm Wendy DeWitt. I'm your moderator for this evening. And on behalf, welcome to tonight's Candidates Night. So Christina, can we move? Appreciate you being here. I think we need to turn off our speaker. I'm Wendy DeWitt. I'm your moderator for this evening.
I think I fixed it for you.
Okay, so let's start over. Welcome to tonight's Candidate Night. We are very happy to see you here. Please give it up for Christina. She is our audio goddess for the evening, and she's doing her best to make sure this brand new system is going to work as described. On behalf of the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition, MWPC, the American Association of University Women, AAUW, the Mendocino Voice, and our sponsor, Ukiah Daily Journal, we welcome you. The proceedings of this evening are streaming live, and if you want to text to a friend who couldn't be here, just tell them to go to the Facebook page for Mendocino Voice and they will find a link, or go to YouTube and search for Mendocino Voice, and it is live streaming on YouTube as well. Our election is June 7th. The ballots have been mailed. Many of us have received them already. The way that things are working tonight, we have some questions prepared in advance. Some have been submitted by readers of our local papers. So those have been noted. They're not just invented by organizers, they have actually come from voters. And there's also an opportunity to submit your questions via 3x5 card. And we have a team of runners who are at your service. If you raise your hand, they will deliver a card to you. And when you have your question filled out, raise your hand again and they will pick it up. And that would be Kyle, Sharon, and Annie. They're waving. Kyle, Sharon, and Annie, make yourselves known. And we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. There will be duplicates, so we may be paraphrasing some, but we will absolutely do our best that all questions are respected and answered. I would now like to introduce Lois Locker.
Thank you so much. My tribal name is Redwood Flower, the youngest daughter of Chief Ukiah of the Sherwood Valley Rancheria people. The Mendocino Women's Political Coalition wishes to honor the homeland of which we are on and its First Nations tribal people. We want to offer recognition and respect to counter the doctrine of discovery with the true story of the original people who were already here, my family. We want to support the reconciliation benefits. Mendocino Women's Political Coalition wants to acknowledge that the land where we live and work is unceded territory of First Nations tribal people since time began. We are surrounded by their traditional ancestral territory. Thank you.
A brief overview of our schedule for the evening is as follows. First appearing on the dais will be Katrina Bartolomie, who is our incumbent clerk recorder. She will be giving a statement and question and answer. David Eyster, our incumbent district attorney, will follow. And then the two candidates for 5th district supervisor. And we will wrap up tonight's event with the two candidates for Mendocino County Superintendent of Schools. There are some rules, and this is for the audience as well as the participants. There's a 2-minute opening, 1 minute, 2 minutes to respond to the questions that I will be asking. 1 minute for rebuttal, and that's optional. There may or may not be a rebuttal. And I'm politely responding or reminding our speakers to keep an eye on the timekeepers. And then the first 2 seats, front and center on the side here, we have our timekeepers. It's very important that we respect our timekeepers this evening. So without any further ado, Katrina Bartolomie.
Good evening and welcome to our candidates night. I was asked to come and speak about what's on the ballot. What's on the ballot and talk to you and take any questions that you might have. So this is our sample ballot that you should have already received. Most people received it late last week. You should be getting your official ballot sometime this week. So it's in the mail. I got a ballot tracks message today that it was mailed and that it's on its way. So if you don't receive your ballot within 10 days, so by the 19th, please call our office and we'll cancel the ballot that was originally sent to you and resend you another one. So on the June, this is considered the gubernatorial primary election. It's different than the presidential primary election. With the presidential primary election, it's a partisan ballot for the race of president. So with the gubernatorial, it's nonpartisan. So what that means is that there's all parties on one ballot. Everybody gets basically the same ballot. And then in November, who will appear on that ballot is the top 2 vote getters from each race. So there could be 2 Republicans, there could be a Republican and a Democrat, there could be a Green and a Democrat or Republican. It's the top 2 vote getters will go to the runoff in November. So again, on this ballot, we have governor. I think we have 26 candidates on here. We have lieutenant governor, we have secretary of state, we have controller, treasurer, attorney general, insurance commissioner, the member of the State Board of Equalization for the 2nd district. We have the U.S. Senate, a full term, which is our normal for U.S. Senate. They are on the ballot every 6 years. So we have a full term, which would be the normal one up. We also have a partial term, and that partial term was vacated when Kamala Harris became vice president, and they appointed Alex Padilla, who was our Secretary of State at the time, to fill that vacancy until the next scheduled election, which is now. We have our U.S. House of Representative, our congressional for the 2nd district. We have our state Senate for the 2nd district. We have our assembly member for the 2nd district. And we have the superintendent of public instruction. And those are pretty much state or district-wide races. Now, locally, we have one candidate for the Judge of Superior Court, and that's Victoria Shanahan. Victoria was appointed by the governor a few years ago, and she has to appear on a ballot at least once. So last year, who had to appear, or 4 years ago, who had to appear was Patrick Pekin. And so he was on the ballot one time, 2 years ago. And he was on the ballot one time. And as long as he's the only filer for that office, he won't appear on the ballot again, as long as he doesn't have a challenger. And that's normal with Superior Court judges. We have our County Superintendent of Schools, and they're both here, candidates, Michelle Hutchins and Nicole Glancer. We have the Assessor-Clerk-Recorder, that's me. We have the new combined office of Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector. We have the District Attorney, he's unopposed, Dave Eyster, he's here. And the Sheriff Coroner, who's also unopposed, is Matt Kendall. So and we also have the 3rd District Supervisors within that race. So as you all know, for 3rd District, only the 3rd District voters can vote on that race. For 5th District, only the 5th District candidates can vote on that race. For the 5th District, we have Ted Williams and we have John Redding, and they're both in the audience and will speak tonight as well. So the only district measure we have on the whole ballot is for Anderson Valley Unified School District. That's Measure M. So if you live in Anderson Valley, within the Anderson Valley Unified School District, that will appear on your ballot as well. So we're already getting questions about the November 8th election. November will be the runoff election for all the statewide races, and it will also be our special district races. So our community services, our fire, our water, Russian River flood control, the Ukiah sanitation district, things like that. So if anyone is interested in running for one of those boards, the filing period is July 18th through August 12th. So they welcome people to come and to sign up to be on a board. It would be great to have some different districts on the ballot. So, that's an important date to remember. We'll also put legal notices in all the local papers for their particular districts. So does anybody have any questions? No? Good. Okay, I think I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katrina Bartolomie. And we're going to move on to our incumbent District Attorney, Mr. David Eyster. He will be discussing his role in law enforcement and answering any questions.
Right there.
10 minutes, sir.
Wow, 10 minutes. I get paid by the word normally, so geez, I should probably get at least 30. Good evening. I'm Dave Eyster. I'm the district attorney. I'm about to do something that hasn't been done for 72 years in Mendocino County. I'm going to be elected to a 4th term. The last time that happened, it was in the primary in 1950. There was a local attorney, James Bush, otherwise known as Jimmy Bush. He had been elected for 4 terms also. So I'll be the second district attorney in the history of this county to have that honor. And it is an honor to represent the people of Mendocino County and to be the chief law enforcement officer. I'll say this, congratulations to Ted and John and Nicole and Michelle, because you're going to have this done in June. When you have to run through June and then go to November, it's a whole different ballgame. And I don't think people understand how hard an election is on not so much the candidate, because they expect that, but on the candidate's family, their friends, supporters, the opponents and the likes. There's folks in this room that have done many an election, and they can speak to that. It's not an easy task, so I congratulate every one of you for stepping forward to promote public service. So thank you all. I'm the gatekeeper to the criminal justice system. As the district attorney, my job is to review the work of the law enforcement agencies, to decide if a case should be charged, a defendant be charged, and if to be charged, at what level. Should it be misdemeanor, felony, infraction, nothing. So we control the amount of work that goes into the Superior Court before our judges. We control the number of witnesses are needed. I have a staff of approximately 45 people that work with me. I have one of the best assistant DAs going. Dale Trigg is the assistant DA. It's not often that you have a former elected district attorney as your assistant. He was the elected district attorney of Delnor County, and I was able to lure him to Mendocino County, mostly because it was closer to Santa Rosa and San Francisco, but also a better place for his 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son to grow up. And they all attend St. Mary's at this point and have a good life. So Dale does a very difficult caseload. He does the sexual assault on children and on adults. He does murders and the likes, and he is a fantastic prosecutor. If you've seen him in court, you'll understand what I'm saying. But all my attorneys work hard. We have a pretty good workload. We review approximately 6,000 police reports a year in Mendocino County to decide if there should be a charge or not. I started in the DA's office in 1984. My legal secretary at that time was a woman by the name of Carmen Polito. She's now known as Carmen Macias. She started when she was, I think, 2 years old working for the county, but she is now the head administrator in my office all these many years later. And so most people will tell you that Carmen will tell you what I'm going to say about something before I even know what I'm going to say. So it's good having that longevity of folks. In Mendocino County history, I'm the 30th district attorney. I don't think folks realize Mendocino County was one of the original counties when California was formed. In 1850, the forming of California, they didn't think there were enough people, or at least qualified people, to govern Mendocino County. So that governance was turned over to Santa Rosa, Sonoma County. In 1859, we finally, I guess, hit the threshold and we had qualified people. And so the first district attorney was elected in 1859 and moving forward. So it's, we tried to maintain the history of the office in the office. We have pictures of all the former DAs in the hallway. We have historical memorabilia we keep. So it's one of those things that the institution, as I explained to my attorneys, is bigger than me. It's a constitutional office. It'll be here after I'm long gone, but it's an important office because #1 job of local government is public safety. That's not up to the feds, even though they have their role in the federal arena. But local government needs to take care of making sure that the people feel safe, that the criminals are dealt with, and we do what's right. I'd like to say that in our office, we wear a white hat. Our job is to tell the truth and seek the truth. And so that's how my attorneys are trained. One of our big problems has been staffing. I know the supervisors have worked on that, and we're not far off where we need to be right now. We're only about 10% off the average. So it's recruiting people is tough, probably because of the housing shortage, the cost of living as far as buying a house or renting here in Mendocino County. But it's one of those things, we still get people to apply and come here. I sell a lot of the quality of life. I don't know, Madam Moderator, do we have questions? Because I don't think I should just filibuster the group.
Thank you for your consideration, sir. We do have a couple of questions. Our audience is interested in how you will prosecute, or if you will prosecute, the homeless for loitering. And along with that, if so, what would possible punishments be? And would that include helping people get treatment that's really needed more than punishing people?
Well, I don't think I've ever prosecuted anyone for loitering. And that may be just a generic term someone used. My concern is that when the the unhoused, the homeless, whatever term you want, are setting up these camps in the creek beds around here and other places. They're terribly messy folks, and they leave needles behind and the likes, and I can't have them in the local creeks. So we do prosecute for doing things that are environmentally improper. And so the answer is I do prosecute folks in that situation. The punishment on all the things we charge is set by the legislature, whether it be in Sacramento or the board of or the city council. Who imposes that is the judge. As I see this 32nd coming up here, our problem with treatment is that we're in Mendocino County. Prop 47 promised us we'd have new rehab programs set up from the savings of reducing felonies to misdemeanors. And since that was passed in 2014, there's been no new program set up in Mendocino County. So that's one of our needs, is to figure out if we need treatment, we got to have the programs. Otherwise, we have to ship people out of county and they don't want to go.
Follow-up question on that. Are there currently any paths to helping people be rehomed or get treatment as opposed to being jailed?
Well, first of all, you're assuming they're going to be jailed. Most of the time, folks are given citations to appear in court. That's a social service question. I don't believe my job is to enforce the criminal laws. I'm not a social worker. If the judges want to sentence in a way that encourages that, I'm all in favor of that. But I think we spend an awful lot of money on social services, and we should expect more.
Okay, that's the only questions I have, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all.
One moment, please. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
May I say one thing? Ms. Bartolomie has a long history in this county too. She goes back to Sheriff Reno Bartolomie, who was probably the only one that could give Tom Allman a run for his money. But it was one of those things that the Bartolomies have a family history of public service, and I appreciate it.
David Eyster. We will now move on to our two candidates for 5th District Supervisor. Please welcome Mr. Ted Williams and Mr. John Redding. That was a nice touch, shaking hands before going to the corners of the ring. Thank you, gentlemen. So you will each have 2 minutes for an introduction. And shall we start with Mr. Redding?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's especially nice to be among people. 4 years ago, I overheard a conversation about the condition of the hospital in Fort Bragg. And one person was complaining, and finally someone said, well, stop complaining and do something about it. And that hit me right between the eyes. And I got this prompting to run for the Mendocino Coast Healthcare District, the hospital board, as we call it, and was elected. And I've been the treasurer there. And it's been quite an experience. Let me tell you, nothing like it in my experience. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, I never thought I'd be here tonight. I'm 71, been retired. I have enough money to suit me. But I got another prompting, and it really came with the realization at the hospital that we could build a new hospital, but it probably wouldn't be sustainable. And that's because we don't have enough medical providers. We're down 60 to 100 people. And it's because of the lack of housing. It's a severe shortage. And so I decided I would run for the Board of Supervisors because that's a place where I could make a difference on that. So I'm really running on economic development, grow our economy, and on government accountability so that it's part of that growth. And then finally, with my last 30 seconds, I'd like to say I've been endorsed by Chris Skyhawk, who ran 4 years ago, but had to drop out because of a debilitating stroke. He said, if we were to come together as a community, we need people with integrity to be our leaders. And that's why I'm endorsing candidate John Redding. As I've gotten to know John, I find him to be smart, sensitive, and responsive. And I believe people in the 5th District will find him the same. So I was really honored to have that. Thank you.
And Ted Williams, 2 minutes.
And I'm Ted Williams. 4 years ago, I came in after about 7 years as being fire chief in Albion, where fire chiefs are volunteer. And I had some thoughts about how important public safety is, how it needs to be a funding priority. We had 2 children, one born in the county, one with us in Santa Cruz while I was trying to figure out how to make it economically. And the way for me was to work remote. And it's incredible with the pandemic that we've seen how county government can work in a remote setting. We don't need people necessarily driving from one side of the county to the other and back. And we've seen individuals and businesses be able to pull that off to some extent. Broadband was another reason I wanted to run. And we're just now making progress. The state is investing more than ever. And part of it is the state's middle mile, and it'll connect to the county's last mile, which we're actively working on planning. I see Jeff in the room. He's actually a consultant working for us on that plan. What I learned about running a county is think about having a dinner party and everyone in this room is invited and you've got $20 for the food. And the state tells you if you buy every dollar of spinach you buy, they'll give you 50 cents of corn, right? You start to put together, it's a convoluted financing system. And now is not the time for a beginner. Now is not the time for conflict. One thing the board has going for it is despite getting through fires, power shutoffs, a pandemic, a drought, and now arguably an economic slowdown, there's cohesion. And no one person in this county runs county government. It takes teamwork on the Board of Supervisors with the other elected departments, with our state representatives, with outside agencies, with the public. It's about cooperation, not competition, to successfully run a county. And I think we're in a very good place right now.
Thank you, sir. We'll start our questions now with John Redding. What steps will you take to bring down Mendocino's debt? And each candidate will have an opportunity to answer the same question.
Yeah, that was one of the questions. Let me refer to my notes. Well, we do have a rather substantial debt. I think if my reading is correct, we have $287 million of long-term liabilities, according to the Comprehensive Financial Report of 2020. To bring that down will require some structural changes in the pension plan. That's the big driver of the unfunded liabilities. And only 70% of those are funded. So there've been several ideas on how to pay that down, accelerating the payment, shortening the time period and so forth. And that'll save a little bit of money, but there's a structural problem and it's a defined benefit. And no one likes to hear it, but defined benefits are dead weights around organizations. They just are. I work for General Electric and we never had a defined benefit, but I still have a pension. So I'm afraid that if we do not make changes such as when a new employee is under service, they no longer receive a defined benefit, but one is based upon longevity of service maybe, but it's not just not defined is the best way to put it. That's the only way I know of to reduce the debt in this county is to face that problem. I don't think I have anything more to add to that.
Ted Williams?
Well, we do need to bring down the debt, but I don't believe in bringing it down on the backs of hardworking public servants. Our employees, a lot of times work for government, work harder, work longer hours, and get paid less than private industry. And they do it because it's noble to work for government. This is the people's government, and they're serving every day. So I don't want to suggest that we cut their pension benefits, whether they're an existing employee or they're a new employee. I would propose working on the revenue side of the equation. And a couple months ago, I brought an item to the board which gained support to look at how we can fund the assessor's office to catch up. And we have an outstanding assessor who understands. She inherited an existing state, just like the Board of Supervisors. And we know there are a lot of houses that are not on the tax rolls. You may be paying your fair share. Your neighbor's house may not be contributing. It may be taxed as vacant land. So I think that's one opportunity. Auditing the TOT, looking at how we can build internal efficiency so the productivity of the county can grow while we maintain the overall staffing at the current level. It's about being more efficient while looking for opportunities to ensure that we're bringing in all revenue.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, we will start with you, Ted. Mr. Williams, we'll go first. How can you enhance our water resources to plan for drought?
Well, the shortest term fix is private water storage. To give you an example, we were fortunate on the coast. The town of Mendocino is suffering drought like no other area of the county. And Senator McGuire partnered with the county and was able to find a $5 million allocation. That $5 million will build a water tank. That's what $5 million gets you today. But it means instead of shuttling water from Ukiah to the coast, think of the carbon footprint, the diesel cost. We're going to be able to shuttle water half mile to a mile from the holding tank. That project, although it's moving at an accelerated rate, may take 3 to 5 years. And we can't wait 3 to 5 years. And so for a lot of residents that are on private wells, the best solution is a storage tank to fill it during the winter months and try to get through the worst part of the dry season with that storage. And I'm hopeful that between the county and the state, we will be able to find funding to subsidize that type of program. And that's why I bring up teamwork. This county is broke. We're trying to balance the budget and we're finding a few scraps here, a few scraps there. And so the only way to spend a dollar is to cut a dollar. And so it really takes working with the state of California to find grant funds, find partnerships, budget allocations, ways to get outside assistance. And then of course for the areas that have water systems, Prop 1, Anderson Valley is a great example. They've made significant headway in planning to use Prop 1 funds, approximately $30 million for sewer, drinking water, and fire suppression water. And I think that may work in other communities.
Okay, thank you.
Well, clearly water is an issue because as they say, they're not making any more water. We're controlled by how much rainfall we get. So in the lean years, obviously we have to store it. I guess I have a problem with how we're going about it. Many years ago, I had a boss who told me, says, Reading, hope is not a business plan. And yet that's what we rely on. We rely on state grants to provide the water storage. That's hope. We hope we get those. What we need, and Ted started to hit on it, we need economic development in this county so that we have local resources to build our own water storage projects. Also, I had a gentleman from Gualala give me a really interesting idea about building catchment basins. I live on a street that has water flowing down it all the time. And if you look at the topography of this county, there's a lot of places that are very steep, covered in trees, and water will just naturally flow down to it. If we put our mind to it, we could build some of those to store water in the lean seasons. But what we can't do is what we often do, it's human nature. And that is once we get some rainfall and everyone's attention goes elsewhere, we don't move forward on storage projects. The last thing I would say, and I'm not an expert on this, but I have been reading about how PG&E has been diverting water. We need to make sure that those delivery contracts are enforced and that we get our fair share of the diversion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will continue then with our next question, and Mr. Redding, we'll start with you. And that will be, what steps would you take to keep Mendocino safe from fire?
Well, obviously, that's an important question. You know, until recently, the policy of the state of California was to mitigate the impacts of fire. And more recently, however, its focus has been to fire prevention. That is, thank you. Instead of waiting till a fire occurs and then trying to mitigate its impact, then let's do some preventative work where you clear out the fuel load, the combustible fuel load. And the state has been moving in that direction, as we know. And Governor Newsom made a big pledge that he was going to clear out some, I forget, the tens of thousands of acres here in Mendocino County. I'm not sure he followed through on that. And so we need to ensure that he does follow through on that and reduce the potential for mega fires. I've also read, and again, I can't say I'm an expert, the strategic plan of the Mendocino County Fire, I forget their name, CAL FIRE, Mendocino County CAL FIRE strategic plan. And they got some really nice ideas in there, particularly about how to control the interface between city or development and force. So there's a lot of good things in there that we should look at.
Thank you. And Mr. Ted Williams? Same
This is
question.
one of my favorite topics. Thank you for asking. Prescribed burns. We have a fire adapted forest that burned naturally, and the first forest managers used fire as a tool, and they knew how to use it. And if you look at the early photos of Mendocino County, black and white, you see that it was a patchwork because it was fire adapted and fire was natural. You didn't have a continuity of fuels. And what we have today is an unnatural arrangement of fuels. I'm not suggesting we do large scale prescribed burns in neighborhood. That's an incompatible model today. But there is opportunity to improve defensible space, which is actually the law. And defensible space isn't so much about protecting a house from a wildfire as it is from protecting a fire at a home site from spreading into the wildland, which is where you get a neighborhood fire. And if it makes it up into the crowns of the trees, you start getting a mega fire that you can't fight with local resources. You're dependent on aircraft, and that's what Mendocino County has seen in past years. Support for the volunteer fire departments. We have 21 local fire agencies around the county that have historically been funded on bake sales. The board in the last few years has made it a priority to ensure more funding. Last year was the most funding we ever saw for these local fire agencies. We cemented with voter approval, we cemented a transient occupancy tax on campgrounds with those funds earmarked for the small fire districts. We've partnered with Fire Safe Council to bolster the chipping program. If you can get your neighbors to get together and create at least 5 home site piles, we can get a chipper to come through and chip that material. This sounds like low-hanging fruit, but that's really what it takes. It takes 100,000 people in Mendocino County learning to be more fire safe, being proactive about clearing brush.
Thank you. We will continue with our next question now. This is directly from our attendees this evening. How do we reconcile, we'll start with you, Mr. Williams. How do we reconcile the need for housing with lack of water and also addressing our need for low and medium income housing?
Housing is housing is a problem across the state of California. When I look at the chart of housing prices relative to median income, it's the highest it's ever been. It's higher than the previous housing bubble. And a lot of the problems we see elsewhere in the state, we see here. And often they're more pronounced and they're harder to solve. We don't have the resources to tackle housing like an urban area. We don't have the tax base for government to assist with building. And certainly we don't control the cost of materials, the cost of labor, or the California building code. The one variable that we can play is land use. There's a lot of opportunity where there are parcels that are only zoned for 2 housing units. We say a 50-acre parcel. A lot of 50-acre parcels can sustain more than 2 houses. It may be time to revisit our general plan to look at areas that are appropriate for density, areas where we think we can develop infrastructure, because if you have water and sewer infrastructure, it's much more feasible to build market rate housing. But it's a tough problem. Nobody can sit up here and say Mendocino County has an answer. What we can do is continue chipping away at the problem. And land use is one of those pieces that I think is most pertinent in the years ahead.
Can you address the water issue a little bit more on that?
Well, yeah, it's true. In order to develop, you need to have water to support the development. There are areas of the county that could sustain additional houses today on the available water. There's areas where additional infrastructure, holding storage, reservoirs could be developed. And I think what's changed is we have a board of supervisors that's actively looking at that plan.
Thank you. Mr. John Redding, same question.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have a couple of ideas, but none of them are mine. I've been talking to people. I spoke with Jerry Mariski of the Grassroots Institute, and she's talked to me about community land trusts, which I think has some promise. It certainly should be looked at. I spoke with Paul Garza, he's the chair of the West Company, and he has really an intriguing idea, which is, and I don't know if he has a name for it, but it's a housing trust or a housing co-op. That's where the co-op owns the homes and the land. People live in them. They grow a little bit of equity, but when they move, they do not put the house on the market. It goes back to the housing trust, and then that way it stays affordable, because every time you sell at market value, it goes up, and we have examples of that. My colleague on the hospital board, Jessica Grinberg, told me about a plan. It's residential care for elderly. I'm just beginning to get familiar with it, but it's another possibility for elderly people who might otherwise have to move, be close to family, can stay in their home, and have another young couple come in and be actual providers, but be in the home as well. There's a lot of these. There are a lot of people, well, I don't know how many, it seems like a lot, people who are living in trailers on campgrounds because that's all they can afford. Well, let's pursue that. And that's certainly an easy way to do it than building apartments and so forth. So let's carve out something in the general plan. And Ted's right, we need to look at the general plan. I don't think it's been changed since 1960, someone told me. We still have a lot of land that's zoned for range, and I don't know how appropriate that is anymore, but it could stand in the way of developing new housing. So, but again,
So we'll move on to our next question. And I should ask you the same, to be fair, about the water issue.
well, yeah, I mean, that's a problem. Yeah, there's no question about it. And that's why we have to do more storage, look at ideas like catchment basins. I think a more distributed solution is needed. maybe every home has a storage tank. We encourage that somehow, rather than have a big centralized tank. We are in an emergency and we need to act like it.
Okay, moving on to our next question then, and we will start with you, Mr. Redding.
You can
And
call me John.
Okay, okay. John, what would you do to create a better relationship with the county-wide elected officers?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I think all relationships, business, professional, are based upon trust. And how you get trusted, you commit to doing something, then you follow through on that commitment. I'm on a board where that doesn't happen, and it creates a lot of distrust. So that's the first thing. You have to do what you promise to do, and then you do that repeatedly and you gain the trust. I think you have to be respectful of what their needs are. I mean, I know what my needs are, but I need to know your needs as well, so we can both come to a place where we're both, our needs are satisfied. I do not believe in giving up my independence as an elected representative to any member of the county government. I think it's too important to, even if it means being contentious, to represent the people and represent what you believe in, even though the CEO, for example, may have other ideas. So I mean, I'm all in favor of good board relationships, but not at the expense of my independence and my ability to do what I think is right. But I've observed, I've been in business a long time, and really comes down to people. Just how do you treat people? If you treat them like family, good. And there's an old Army saying, my son was in the Army, he said, their motto is great leaders eat last. And I think that's what supervisors need to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ted Williams, same question, please.
Well, I think the Board of Supervisors generally has a good relationship with the other elected department heads. Incidentally, Sheriff Matt Kendall has endorsed me. So despite what you might read in the paper that there's conflict between the two of us or between the sheriff and the board, we still have a working relationship. And I think there's mutual respect, and both of us care deeply about the county. David Eyster, I don't think I've had any conflict with David yet. Hopefully I never do. He's not the kind of guy I want conflict with. Our assessor, like I said earlier, is just outstanding. And I think part of having good relations is everybody trying to stay in their lane. I was very careful when I went to Katrina, suggesting that we assess all parcels, in that this is under her leadership, this is her domain. The part for the Board of Supervisors is to make sure we fund it so that she has the resources to accelerate that catch-up process. The tax collector in the auditor's office, there has been a little bit of conflict because the board decided, this was a 4-1 decision, that it may be more efficient as a department with one elected department head. This is a configuration the state allows. It's a configuration other counties have employed, including Sonoma. And 4 of us felt that there's an economy of scale. Having about 12 employees in a department, you don't get that same economy of scale as having double that. At the same time, don't change it if it's not broken. But we look at the long history of those offices, and we see the county pension plan was run by one of them. 1/3 of the pensions are in error, and we have payroll operating out of the auditor's office. Who's auditing that? This may not be the most dynamic configuration for Mendocino County. So you never know. There's risk in inaction. If you do nothing and keep status quo, that's a big risk. And you make changes, hopefully they're the right change. If it's not, we'll put it back.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question then, and starting with Mr. Ted Williams. What would you do to mitigate climate change and protect our environment?
Well, the board has taken action to protect our climate and the environment. For the first time, we reserved funds to address our impact on climate change. The decision of how to use those funds is still pending. I imagine there will be an opportunity to benefit the climate and reduce our operating expenses. For example, more fuel efficient vehicles. We have staff that has to work in the field. Maybe they're doing building inspections or they're doing social work. Saving on fuel is a benefit for the county. It's also a benefit for the climate. We installed, or we planned for electric heat pumps at the new $25 million county jail wing. Those, not only are those heat pumps better for the environment, but we should save $45,000 a year in gas. And there's the opportunity to use solar energy, perhaps in the parking lot where we create shade to also power the heaters and air conditioners. So I think the county is taking active steps. It's a struggle because we don't have a lot of cash to work with. And so we have to find those opportunities where we're solving two problems at once. We're solving an economic problem for the county, and we're also looking out for the environment.
Okay, thank you. Same question?
Yeah, well, I just want to go back real quick and say I disagreed with combining those two elected offices because even though there's some efficiency in it, it eliminated some checks and balances, which are pretty important. On the issue of climate change, I think the best thing we can do is to build a resilient community, one that can withstand not only climate change, but natural disasters as well. And that can only be done if we have a robust economy that's throwing off the resources that we need to combat the effects of climate change or fires and other natural disasters. Studies have shown, and this is something that I've always been interested in, that there is a strong correlation between the economic wealth, if you will, of a nation and its environment. So GDP goes up, so does all the indices that measure environmental progress. So that's where my focus would be. We can throw some money at some short-term solutions. It depends on what those solutions are. I've seen a lot of money flow into the pockets of investors, hedge fund people who own a lot of the renewable energy and the storage technologies. So I wouldn't want to spend our money that way. This county has a lot of needs, and we have to get our priorities. Thank you.
And we will start with John Reding on this next question, which follows in very nicely with that last one. How would you propose the county best address the conditions of county roads over the coming years?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So I've been speaking with some of the men and women who work in county roads. And one, they're understaffed like everybody. They're working long hours. They're away from their family and they have trouble hiring. But more importantly, they tell me that the county hasn't purchased any new equipment in 4 years. That a lot of the equipment is many years old and they're lucky to get through a job without equipment breaking down. So, I mean, once you identify the root causes and you can do something about it, we need to invest more in the people and in the equipment that we have in order to do a proper job. Again, it's a matter of priority. You have a limited amount of resources. What's going to be the best benefit to the community? And then fund those accordingly. That's my comment. Oh, I had another minute.
Okay, anything to add? Okay, and Mr. Williams?
Well, roads are one of the most difficult financial problems in this county. Our road network was really built for resource extraction, not necessarily hosting a lot of residences spread out sparsely across an unincorporated county the size of 2 small states. I think we have about one road worker per 25 miles. We have over 1,000 miles of roads. The state does a survey periodically of the condition of county and city roads. That last survey indicated that we need about $698 million over the next 10 years This is about a report that's about 2 years old. It's a lot of money. It's a lot more money than we have. I think this comes back to the, how do we reduce our debt? How do we generate more revenue? It's a revenue problem. And in the meantime, there may be opportunities for individual communities to decide they want to fund their local road that they use every day to a higher level than the rest of the county. And I know Supervisor Haschek has been actively looking at this service area 3 idea. And you can think of it as a benefit zone. You could get your neighborhood together and decide you have a road. Hopefully it's not one way in and one way out, but we have a lot of those. You use it every day, and you would rather pay $100 a year than repairs on your car that may exceed that $100. There's an opportunity for the county to collect that and accelerate the road work. I know nobody wants to hear more taxes, more fees, but this is a way for individual communities to jump to the head of the line by self-funding the roads that they use every day. Short of that, we have an excellent director of transportation. I went to a state conference where I got to watch his colleagues show their respect for him. I don't think there are creative ideas about how to get more miles of road maintained than Howard already accomplishes.
And we'll move on to did you have a rebuttal? Okay, we will move on to our last question, and we're like just running out of time. So we'll wrap up with, what do you think, and this will be beginning with Ted Williams. What do you think is the best plan for the county's involvement in the local cannabis industry in relationship to licensed businesses and to enforcement of unlicensed businesses? What actions would you take as a supervisor to make this happen?
Yeah, so the state, thanks to voters passing Proposition 64, created a process that's so complicated. It's very difficult to find anybody who understands it, including the people who work in government, including some of the people who are trying to regulate it. And to simplify it, if you want to grow cannabis and sell in the legal market, you need a state license. You need a license from the state of California. In order to get that license, the county issues a permit. And in that process, inspects your site, generates documentation. You take that to the state. If the state sees that you've done everything right, you'll get your state license. So we read in the news that it's the county's failed pot program. It's actually the state's failed pot program. If we make it an easier process in Mendocino County, the applicant doesn't have a chance of getting their state license. So regulation aside, what we see is this used to be a $5,000 per pound product, and then it fell in half, and then it fell in half again, and then it fell in half again. And it'll continue to fall. This is the nature of legalizing. And when for my entire life, I heard, if you don't like drugs, legalize it, take the money out of it. That's essentially what California did. They deflated the value because now it's just an ag commodity. Only it has this onerous regulation that you don't see in any other ag industry. So this is one for the state to work out. The impact on Mendocino County is we've lost a lot of revenue in places we didn't even know it was flowing. You look at the car dealerships, the drop in sales. We knew that there would be a drop in sales. People don't come in with cash to buy a car unless they're in that type of market generally. But there are a lot of other businesses that are now feeling the effects of losing that revenue. And Mendocino County is at a crossroads. We need to figure out what is next. What are our values? What's compatible in our county as far as economic development? And how do we build a new economy, because cannabis isn't coming back?
Thank you.
Well, I agree with almost everything Ted said. It hasn't worked out. I recently, here to just to diverge a little bit, read a report that was prepared for the Board of Supervisors by Beacon Economics on the state of economic development in Mendocino County, and it was dire. That's how they described our economy. And they said the manufacturing has fled the county. The ag business is down, and cannabis never materialized, and they were warning about it a couple of years ago. What's left is tourism, retail, healthcare, and government. And those industries do not generate jobs. They have what they call a job multiplier of 1.1. And what Mr. Garza, who's been in economic development, says we need industries with a job multiplier of about 5 to 10. And to get that, you need industries that actually export out of the county. You know, when the timber and fishing business were thriving, we were, as a county, thriving because they were selling product out of the county and money was coming in that we could reinvest in jobs and build housing. So we need to make it easier to do business in Mendocino County. We need to make it easier for businesses to expand and others to locate here. And so there's a number of problems, of course, lack of housing. But I think if we put our focus, we'll put our minds on growing our economy, then that will ultimately solve these other problems that we have.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your time with us this evening. Ted Williams, John Kennett, John Redding.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to thank the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition for putting this together and inviting me and everybody else who sponsored it. It's a great, great event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
This was great. Thank you.
We'll now introduce our two candidates for the Mendocino County School Superintendent. That will be, please welcome Michelle Hutchinson and Nicole Glenser. Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. Michelle Hutchins. That was my typo. And since I made a little flaw on Michelle's name, Ms. Hutchins, we'll begin with the 2-minute introduction.
I am honored to stand here before you. I guess I'm sitting, but as a woman, a public school mom, and an elected official. In my campaigns for County Superintendent of Schools, I appreciate the vital role of the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition and why women must continue to support and empower one another to become political leaders. In 2018, you elected me to bring change to the County Office of Education. I led our office into the 21st century by adopting new technology supports, valuing critical thinking, and prioritizing problem solving over rote skills. Before my first term, the office passed state money directly to districts instead of providing the services prescribed by the California Department of Education, resulting in outdated resources and low student achievement. I changed that, created a new management team, and built the capacity to serve all 12 school districts and 12 charter schools effectively and efficiently. As a result, every child matters now in Mendocino County. My commitment to our students and community is to improve student achievement, expand leadership opportunities, and engage with real-world problem solving, and increase access to mental health supports. I'm courageous enough to buck the system, test cultural limitations, and work to bridge social boundaries. I'm not afraid to take risks, as risk is an essential ingredient of change. The changes you elected me to make are well underway. What is needed now is stable and productive leadership. Experience matters, and it matters now more than it has ever before. Learn more at reelectmichellehutchins.com, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Thank you.
And Nicole Glenser.
I started my career about 26 years ago. I was a paraprofessional at an elementary school. I got a job as a bilingual paraprofessional helping children to learn how to speak English, and just fell in love with working in education. So I went back to school and I earned my teaching credential. I got a job teaching high school where I got to help kids prepare for jobs, apply for scholarships, apply for college. I did all the things that a high school teacher does. I chaperone dances and football games, serve nachos, all that stuff. I loved it. Eventually I started taking on more leadership roles and eventually began to support other teachers. And the sort of natural progression was I was asked to join the leadership team, first as an assistant principal and then as a principal. About 10 years ago, I became the superintendent in Potter Valley. And in a position like that, you wear many hats. I was the superintendent and elementary school principal and the director of maintenance operation and transportation and the special ed director and the Spanish teacher. So I understand the needs of our smaller districts. I currently work in Ukiah Unified as the assistant superintendent for human resources. I'm running for office because our schools need more support. We have some urgent matters that need tending to right away. COVID adaptation and recovery, we need to dive into that head first. We need to work collaboratively to work through some of the complex problems that COVID's presented us with, namely staffing. Recruitment is really difficult in all industries, but especially in education and especially in Mendocino County. These are some complex problems that we can work through together. I'm endorsed by 4 current superintendents, 5 retired superintendents from our county, Ted Williams and Momo Heron, and over 100 educators. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. We'll start now with the questions and we will begin with Nicole Glenser. Our first question, because many people in the audience have expressed that they don't quite understand the role. So we're going to ask you both about what that is. What is the administrative structure of school districts of the Mendocino Office of Education? And what are the responsibilities, authority, and the chain of command? And how, no, we'll stop there. That's enough. Okay. So
By statute, one of the biggest roles the County Office of Education plays is fiscal oversight for our districts. And that's a really important role. And they've been doing a good job of that, I would say, over the last several years. They've got a great fiscal team that lends quite a lot of support to our districts. When I became superintendent in Potter Valley, that was an area that we really relied heavily upon the county office for fiscal oversight and advice. But when you get down to it, in all things, the County Office of Education their job is to provide service to our county, to the districts within our county and our charter schools to make sure that they're supported in whatever change is coming through education. So to make sure that they're working collaboratively with the school districts, with the school district leaders, that they're also keeping the school districts and charter schools abreast of the changes that are coming down. So that is one of the really important roles that I want to emphasize because I think it's an area of growth right now. I think our schools need to be drawn together more to work collaboratively for some of these really complex problems that schools are facing. The County Office of Education also has oversight to some of their own schools. They provide support to our charter schools, which is a really important thing in our county. That our charter schools play an important role in offering a wide range of educational options for our families in Mendocino County. But what has drawn me to this position is my desire to help the schools, the charter schools and the school districts in staying abreast of changes and getting the support that they need to be able to make those changes.
thank you. Michelle Hutchins.
So the question, I believe, included the structure of school districts as well as county. Am I correct?
What is the administrative structure of school districts?
Thank you. So administratively, you do have district superintendents that are hired by an independently elected school board. That is at the school district level. Your independently elected school board hires your district superintendent, and your district superintendent does the nuts and bolts of the job for the board. Your school district board sets your vision, sets your policy, and really sets the direction because they're locally elected people from your community. When you move to the county level, you have a county board of education that is also independently elected. The County Board of Education functions as the district board for the schools that the County Office of Education directly runs, our court and community schools, our adult education programs. Now, the county superintendent has a very unique role. The county superintendent represents the taxpayer and the student to make sure the districts, the district board of education, and your school leaders, your district superintendent, are doing the job they're supposed to be doing. You are the oversight and the local arm of the California Department of Education. And any structure that provides oversight knows you do it best if you can also provide technical assistance. So yes, we do provide support to schools because we want to see them successful. That is our role of representing the student. But we also represent the taxpayer to make sure those dollars are spent appropriately. So that's the difference really between the county superintendent and your district superintendent.
For our next question, we will start with Michelle Hitchens. And this has to do with a little broad ranging again. How will you work collaboratively with school district leaders to meet the needs of our students? The county offices are asked to coordinate and oversee continuous improvement efforts in the local districts. And given that these different districts best know their own needs and strengths and weaknesses, how would you assess those needs, respect the expertise, cooperative collaboration with each district to see that each district's needs are best met?
So we use data. Data tells us where our students are achieving and where our students are not achieving. We utilize the local data of a district to really help the district uncover what is the root cause of that data issue that they're looking at. We look at, so when a school district does not make the targets that are set by the State Board of Education, because we have minimum levels that we need to meet. And we not only need to meet them with our general population, but we need to meet them with all of the subpopulations of students that we serve. Every subpopulation has to meet the same state targets that the whole school makes. And when one doesn't, then a school is put into what's called differentiated assistance. That is when a county office of education is asked to work with a school district to help with that deficiency. But we don't come in with a prescriptive method. We come in with a process of a deep data analysis where we're looking at the root cause of what the issue is. Oftentimes, our office is assisting with collecting additional data points because there may not be enough information initially collected to be able to discover the root cause. When the root cause is uncovered, we then work with the district's team in putting together a plan that then they enact on that plan. And we do a cycle of inquiry to make sure the plan is making the progress it was established to make. And so it is working collaboratively with districts. It's a very different way of working. The state in the past has always done more prescriptive methods. And today we're trained to really work alongside the experts in the district and help them develop that language of continuous improvement.
Thank you. Nicole Glenser?
Working collaboratively is one of the best ways to work through any complex problem, isn't it? And when you have a complex problem and you need to get together and develop a plan, you need to have strong relationships with the people that you're working with. One of the things that we've seen through COVID, which is some of the most challenging times that we've experienced in education and in other fields as well, is that in order to get through really difficult times, you need to build strong relationships so that you can have plans, so that you can disagree with each other and still be able to respect each other. You need to build those relationships. So that's step one. If you're going to work collaboratively, you need to build trust and a strong relationship with the districts. Beyond that and after that, you need to help them. And I would agree with the incumbent. You need to help the district look at data and question what data should we look at for this. There are times when a smaller district especially may not have the tools to gather the data that's best used to address the problem. So the position of the county superintendent and of MCOE is to really help guide the process and to listen and to listen and to listen. Because when you are dealing with any area of improvement, you need to listen to the staff, to the parents, to the students. You need to hear why they think this problem exists. If we're talking about student performance, you need to ask students and parents and staff what they think. Where does this come from? There's a lot of listening involved. And then, and also providing the districts with ideas for training, best practices, so that once they've used the data and developed some plans, that they can gain the skills they need to put that plan into action.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question then. What have you done or what would you do to address the staffing shortages in schools? Nicole Glenser.
Well, I wish we could say we had it all solved, but we do not. The staffing shortage has been around in Mendocino County for a while, and it's certainly gotten worse during COVID. And as we try to move out of COVID, it's acute at this point. So some of the things that we have done, I am currently working in Ukiah Unified. Some of the things that we've done is looking at our pay structure for various positions and really upping our recruitment and thinking differently about recruitment. We went to the block party at Grace Hudson. That's not a recruitment event, but we thought we might as well have a table there. Maybe we'll catch some parents walking by. So really thinking differently about recruitment. And I think there are two things that we need to look at as we work to solve the staffing problem. And that is, how can we grow our own bus drivers, our own teachers from within, and how can we recruit from outside? And so there are some great programs for growing your own teacher, for example, through the North Coast School of Education. I've sat on their advisory board for several years now, and that's getting more sophisticated every year. I'm really trying to reach out to classified employees who are currently working in schools to help them develop and to go back to school, get scholarship in order to gain their teaching credential. And as far as recruitment outside, that's not always as successful. We're not as close to San Francisco as a lot of people think. But certainly there's a lot to be said for trying to recruit from areas where we know, for example, they may be reducing in staff. Those are areas that we need to target and invite those staff members from a different county perhaps to find a job in Mendocino County if there's a reduction being made in their area.
Thank you very much. And Michelle Hutchins, same question, please.
So recruitment and retention is obviously critical for upping our teacher shortage or lessening the teacher shortage. This is not something that Mendocino faces alone. This is a statewide shortage that we have of teachers. It is also not something that educators face alone. We have a shortage of employees everywhere. There isn't one industry I have spoken to or listened to where they haven't expressed to me a shortage of employees. So yes, all of the recruitment and retention methods are essential in increasing our teaching faculty. However, we need to really fix, as we listen to the last debate, the housing issue in Mendocino County. We have hired people and they have left. I see Ms. Cuban in the back, and I know in UUSD, they have hired people and they haven't been able to find housing. And that's a problem. When you're a school administrator and you've done your due diligence to bring someone great into this community and you can't house their family, that's an issue. So the County Board of Education is holding a symposium this year for school district boards of education and their superintendents to explore building teacher housing on school district property. School districts have a lot of property that is unused, and many school districts across the state have started this exploration, and the California School Boards Association is in great support of this concept. So we're going to be bringing members of the California School Boards Association to Boonville, actually, and hold this symposium for our local elected boards.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I am getting lost. You have both answered that question now, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
we
thank
have.
you. So this one we will begin with Michelle Hutchins, and this is a little bit complicated, kind of makes up for that one being a little bit more direct. And our audience would like to know, how many votes of no confidence have you been given in any district you have served? And if so, what was your role at the time? Have you ever been fired or resigned in lieu of being fired as a superintendent in any district? And this question will be, of course, for all candidates. And Michelle Hutchins first, please.
So thank you for this question. I have received a vote of no confidence, and actually I'm proud of it because of what I learned. So first I want to explain to you what a vote of no confidence is and what it means, and how should a leader handle receiving one. A vote of no confidence is a symbolic gesture by a union to communicate disagreement with a leader. Since it's the school board that controls the superintendent's employment, no confidence votes by unions are symbolic and have no binding impact. I have received an extension on my employment contract as a result of how I navigated the situation with the Anderson Valley Union. Sometimes the superintendent has to make decisions that are very unpopular. For example, the food program in Anderson Valley was spent $100,000 of money that should go to books instead on food. The school board and I hired a consultant and made a plan to fix that encroachment of money. Early on, it was evident that the staff and community were not good with the changes. The consultant offered within the first week to end the contract and leave because he saw the angst that was building in this community. The board did not want to end the contract. So I was charged to make it work despite community and staff opposition. 1 year later, with the community now very upset, board members resigned, 3 of them. New members were appointed who now had 3-year binding contract with this new food consultant. They demanded that we fire the consultant. So on a very short moment, I had to turn on a dime and change the reality for the school district, and we needed to break the contract and switch gears. This resulted in a balanced budget and a return of the financial problem when the board broke the contract with the consultant. The financial situation coupled with the food program resulted in that vote of no confidence. This is all well documented in letters to the editor from the 2018 campaign. These experiences have shaped me and gave me the ability to counsel a school superintendent who faces similar challenges today. This is why experience matters. I'm sorry I took too much time.
Thank you, Michelle. Hutchins, Nicole Lancer.
I've not had a vote of no confidence. I agree that experience matters. I think that I have experience having very difficult conversations, negotiations, employee discipline issues that have gone through the multiple channels that one can go through when working with unions. I'm proud to say that I'm endorsed by the California School Employees Association and the Potter Valley Education Support Professionals. I am the chief negotiator with CSEA in Ukiah. I was the chief negotiator, superintendent in Potter Valley. We did not always agree on everything. I managed to maintain very positive relationships throughout even the most difficult of negotiations and employee discipline matters. Although a vote of no confidence may be symbolic, it is nonetheless very damaging. And I think that it's something that it is unusual to see happen, especially for an administrator to receive 2 votes of no confidence is especially unusual. And I think experience does matter. And I have experience working through very difficult conversations, difficult issues with unions, with parents, with students, without resulting in a vote of no confidence. And I want to reiterate that I am endorsed by over 100 residents of Mendocino County who are current or retired educators. I think that is important. I hope that those of you that are not in education tune into that, because that says a lot, I think, about the need for change. Those that are closest to the work are seeing a significant need and an urgent need for change.
Thank you, Nicole Gunzer. We will begin with you for our next question. What steps should be taken to raise student achievement in school districts with special attention to also our Spanish-speaking community and the Native American students? And what would you do to address the crisis?
During the pandemic, the achievement gap is the difference between those that are the highest performing and those that are the lowest performing. And we often see a gap between those that come from privilege, the Caucasian students, English speaking in their home. Those students generally perform at a higher level than students from socioeconomically disadvantaged households, children of color, Native American, especially in our county, have a history of underperforming. So I think when we look at achievement, the first thing we need to look at, and the first question we need to ask is, are we providing do we have equitable access to all of our programs? And I'm not just talking math and English. I'm talking about the enrichment programs, the things that draw our students to school, sports. We need to look at the makeup of our athletic teams, of our advanced placement classes, of our shop classes, of everything, to see, do our clubs, do our classes reflect the demographics of our community? If they don't, then our first question is, what are we going to do about that? Increasing rigor, that's important. Of course, we have kids that are far behind in math and especially at the lower grades in English language arts. We need to address that right away. But what we really need to be asking through every question and every discussion that we have about education is, what's the equity issue here? Because there is an equity issue in everything that we're looking at, whether it's students' performance on a test, students' grades, their access to sports, their access to the fine arts, all of those things we need to be asking, is there equitable access?
Thank you.
Would you
Michelle
please
Hudson?
repeat the question?
So the question is, what steps should be taken to raise student achievement in school districts, and especially addressing our Spanish-speaking community and the high dropout rate among the Native American students?
So the achievement gap is not the difference between the highest score and the lowest score. The achievement gap truly is the difference between the subpopulation's achievement and the general population achievement of the school. And if there's a disparity, that's the gap. The state of California has greatly redesigned its accountability system because it saw that in the last 20 years, we have not closed any of our achievement gaps for any of our subpopulations. In fact, they've gotten larger, not shorter or smaller. Because of that fact, the state has specifically designed an accountability system that measures each subpopulation on a variety of different points to the general population. And if you're not making minimum state targets that are set by our State Board of Education, then you are put into what the state is calling differentiated assistance. The work that we're doing is changing and increasing student performance with county, sorry, I should rephrase that. The work of continuous improvement through differentiated assistance statewide is showing in districts closing of achievement gaps. I have about 50 examples I could give you from around the state of where school districts successfully closed achievement gaps utilizing these state processes. And again, they work alongside with those district experts. This isn't done at school districts. It's done with them, with their expertise and with their knowledge of their children and their teaching faculty in order to create those plans that do shrink those gaps. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will start with Michelle Hutchins on this next question. How do you plan on collaborating with local tribal governments to address chronic absenteeism among Native American students and also address the fact that there is a history of systemic oppression among our Native people in this area? As superintendent, what changes would you make to empower, educate, and employ Native American children?
Well, I believe in the employment part 100% as my most recent, or not most recent hire, but one of my most newly hires is Yolanda Torres, who is my direct support person. She is my right and my left hand, as she is my administrative assistant. And Yolanda Torres is from one of our local tribes, and she is absolutely just a gem to work with. So it is important that we employ people from our minority cultures in our workforce. I have one of the most diverse workforces at Mendocino County Office of Education today. But truly, it's about listening. It's about understanding how Native people need our schools to be different so that we can embrace their culture in a way that is inclusive. In visiting Round Valley schools just last week, I was very impressed with a lot of their processes where they've taken our positive behavior intervention and supports program and they've made it more Native friendly in the sense that the images that they're using, we're using the directions, we're using the natural order and flow of things. We're tying things to more things that are important to the Native culture so that we can speak in their language the types of concepts that we're trying to get across. It really is working collaboratively with the cultures, and Round Valley School District has done an excellent job in really incorporating the Native culture. We're now teaching Native languages at Round Valley Unified School District. I believe you're also teaching Native languages in Ukiah Unified as well. And that's big. That's a big step.
Thank you, Michelle Hutchins. Nicole, answer the same question, please.
I think when we're looking at chronic absenteeism with our Native population, we need to talk to our Native parents and our Native students for insight. The reason for the absenteeism may not be the same from student to student. I think in general, we can presume that there's a level of having been disenfranchised with schools, but we need to look a lot deeper than that. And we also need to look at where we have areas of success. I went to the big time at Round Valley High School about a month ago. Attendance that day, I'm just gonna guess, was at an all-time high, since I don't think there was anybody left in the community that wasn't at the school. It was a big draw and an exciting time. And I think that we need to look at where we have success. And I think where we have, is it a class where a student can learn Pomo language or culture? Maybe. I think I found that athletics is pretty important to a lot of students, a lot of Native students and a lot of Native families. And when a student may become ineligible because of grades, that can be really discouraging, because the one thing that brought them to school, now they can't be on the team. And so we really have to look at the whole student and the whole year. And we need to reach out to the people that know better than us. I am not Native, not a Native expert. I recently had a very profound conversation with a Native friend who really made me dig deep into what I believe about myself and about equity. I think we need to listen to the people that have spent their decades investing in the Native communities. We need to listen to our Native leadership, and we need to be responsive to them, recognizing that may prompt us to make changes that we may not be very excited to make, but we need to look deep and we need to make the changes that are necessary. I don't know what those changes are, but with enough listening and enough collaboration, we'll get there.
Thank you. We are just about out of time. We've done our best to address questions across a broad spectrum so that the most voices could be heard and questions could be answered. We have time for one more. So we will leave our candidates with this. What specifically would you do differently than Michelle? And this goes both ways. What would be done better? So there's the question. We'll start with Nicole to answer on that.
I think a significant area of growth in this office is the ability to build relationships and trust and collaboration with other school leaders in our county. The job of superintendent is a very difficult and lonely job. You're responsible to a board, the students, the taxpayers. The level of responsibility is felt profoundly by our district superintendents. I'm endorsed currently by 4 current superintendents. I hope that speaks loudly because our superintendents want more collaboration. They want more support. Having successfully been a superintendent in Potter Valley and now as an assistant superintendent in Ukiah Unified, I have the experience to provide them with the support that they really need and that the schools need them to have. What else would I do differently? I think I will build a stronger relationship with the labor union at MCOE. I'm confident that the employees there that are currently feeling unheard, that there are ways to hear them through regular meetings with union leadership, through collaboration with other union leaders in the county. I think that there's a lot of work to be done to draw people together. And as we come out of this pandemic, at whatever point this is going to be in the rearview mirror, we're not there yet, but at whatever point this is in the rearview mirror, we're going to really need to come back together because a lot of relationships have been damaged during this pandemic, not just in schools. But what I will do differently is focus on rebuilding those relationships and rebuilding the trust and listening and responding to the needs of the leaders within our schools.
Thank you very much. Michelle Hutchins.
What would I do differently? I would lead not during a pandemic. Essentially. I need to emphasize something, and that is that it is improper for a county superintendent to solicit endorsements from people who work for the schools and whose paycheck I write, especially those teachers who are beholden to district superintendents who have endorsed the other candidate. That is 75% of the teachers in this county. It's improper for me to ask for that endorsement. I have, however, been endorsed by Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblymember Jim Wood, and have the unprecedented endorsement of every independently elected member of the County Board of Education. I repeat, the unprecedented endorsement of every independently elected member of the County Board of Education. So, what would I do differently? I would lead when we did not have a pandemic. I am really looking forward to the next 4 years to be able to actually do this job without the interference of a pandemic.
Thank you very much. And we will start our wrap up with 2-minute closing statement. Michelle Hutchins, please go first.
With 28 years in education as a teacher, principal, Cal Poly instructor, superintendent in 2 rural school districts, and 4 years in the job already, I am uniquely prepared to serve as your county superintendent of schools. The role of the county office has changed in the last 9 years, with significant changes happening in the last 4. County offices are now newly charged with oversight of the school's accountability with academic achievement, graduation rates, attendance, suspension rates, and college and career readiness. If schools do not make the state targets for all subpopulations in all of these areas, then the county office is assigned to offer support to the school. Your vote and support of my reelection sends a message to all schools that it matters that student achievement levels in Mendocino County improve, that it's not okay to have flat student achievement year after year. Children deserve choices, opportunities, and options for their growth, no matter where they live, what school they attend, or the wealth of their family. As your county superintendent, I fight for a future where all children experience a high-quality, personalized education, preparing them for the world they live in today. We, you and I, can make this difference together. It's no longer enough to prepare our children for something. We must now prepare them for anything. I know you agree with me. You want our children not only to know what they learned, but why they learned it and how they will use it. Please vote Michelle Hutchins. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Glenser, 2 minutes, please.
Regarding endorsements, it's an interesting thing, never having run for office again before. I was unfamiliar with the process. It's been inspiring to receive unsolicited endorsements. Many of my endorsements I did solicit, but many I got a letter in the mail yesterday with a contribution and something saying, I will endorse you. That was another recent retired MCOE employee. I really would hope that the voters in Mendocino County will pay very close attention to the fact that current educators and retired educators are backing me in this campaign. The work that they do is really hard. We talk about recruitment, we need to talk about burnout. When our educators are saying help, we need to help them. The way they need help right now is they need leadership that will listen and be responsive to their needs. That's what their endorsements mean. That's why I keep coming back to it. I'm really proud. I'm so honored to have their endorsements. I'm the first in my family to have graduated from college. I know what it means to come from rural California and what a quality education, quality public school education can do for our students. I'm passionate about supporting students. I'm passionate about serving the leaders who lead our students, who have their boots on the ground. I am confident that Mendocino County schools are going to come out of this pandemic having learned a lot, and they will be better for the hard times that we've gone through, but only if we can come together and work on the problems that we now have together. They shouldn't have to struggle through this on their own. They need our support.
Thank you very much. Learn more about our candidates, talk with them, ask more questions. We really appreciate your time coming this evening. On Sunday in Willits at the Little Lake Grange, there is another candidate forum. Please attend if you have more questions and are looking for more information. Please give a warm round of appreciation. Nicole Glenser, Michelle Hutchins.